Hi guys, GB News like to have their own type of experts, which don't have a skill in anything but talking rubbish. So right-wing commentator Matthew Goodwin was invited on to push the hung parliament line, where Labour don't win a massive majority at the next general election and instead end up with a few seats short to rule on their own, which would mean a coalition government, likely with the Lib Dems or perhaps the Green Party. This position has been ridiculed by actual experts like Sir John Curtis, but let's hear Matt make his ridiculous point.
So I think the race will narrow. Now, if you take the local elections that we had only a couple of weeks ago, and you look at the national equivalent vote share from those, they suggest Labour's probably about 9 or 10 points ahead nationally, not the 20, 30 points that we're seeing. Now, that puts us in hung parliament territory, right? So if Labour fail to win an overall majority, then what happens? Then we're into a messy hung parliament.
Because they may...
Oh my goodness, we've been down this road before. You can't compare the local elections with the general election because people vote for different reasons. People vote generally on local issues, not on national issues at the local election. The turnout is generally much lower at the local compared to the general. And of course, not every constituency is up for running at the local elections. So the local elections this year in England, it was like half the constituencies were up for grabs. So you can't compare. And the experts have said this. Sir John Curtis himself has said you can't use the local elections as a barometer because people vote for different reasons. The turnout is different and the constituencies are different. Now, you can use it as a trend. Okay, support is moving away from the Conservatives. Then you can apply that probably to the general election. But you can't use it to predict because it's based on different variables.
May need to go into coalitions, just say Reform or someone like that do really well. The Liberal Democrats, what's happened to them? Because they appear to be squeezed at the moment. Nobody's even talking about them. I mean, is their logo yellow or orange?
Well,
I find this hilarious. You have pro-Reform UK GB News attempting to ridicule the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats have won seats in the past. The Liberal Democrats have won by-elections recently, and the Liberal Democrats will win seats in the future. GB News' Reform UK have won 0 seats. Now, they have attracted a defection from an independent, if you can call it a defection. Lee Anderson was an independent. He became a Reform UK MP. That's all they have. They haven't actually won any seats, apart from maybe 2 councillors out of thousands. But MPs, they have won 0 seats. And they will win 0 seats.
I think the problem for the Lib Dems is they don't have that niche issue. They don't have a very clear issue like they did perhaps during some of the Brexit debates. They're on about 9%. They'll have some recovery. They'll probably come back in somewhere between 20 and 30 seats. Reform Party, to be honest, they'll be lucky if they get 1 or 2 seats because they really need to be polling up into the 15 to 20% plus range to really... Look,
I've said before, the reason I believe that Reform UK will win 0 seats is because they have to go into a constituency where they're competing with the Conservatives, not really competing with Labour, competing with the Conservatives, and they're going to split the right-wing vote. So they'd actually have to be beating the Conservatives by a massive majority, or they'd have to be some sort of tactical voting where the Conservative stands aside. That's the only way. Like under normal circumstances, Reform UK will win 0 seats. Now it's possible they could win 1 or 2, but it would, as I said, require some sort of tactical voting where the Conservative stands aside or convinces people to vote for reform. I don't see why that would happen. Or if there was some sort of pact between Nigel Farage and Rishi Sunak to help reform in some way. But once again, I don't see that happening.
Be winning seats in Westminster. Now, that's not to say they won't cause a lot of damage to the Conservative vote, because they will. And look, I meet Reform voters every day. They're out there, they're talking to me on the tube and the trains and everything. My instinct is, maybe like lots of people watching this show, I don't think they're going to go back to the Conservatives, right? I think the Conservatives are going to have a really big, bold offer on that immigration issue. They're going to have to say, look, we're stopping the boats, we're bringing down legal migration. Until they do that, I don't think they're coming home.
But they're already saying that, and Reform UK voters are sticking with Reform. So this is gold for the Labour Party. Because you have right-wing commentators saying the Conservatives need to move further to the right. They need to abandon the centre ground, where most voters are, in order to pander to Reform UK. But most Reform UK voters want to give the Conservatives a bloody nose. So they're not going to come back. Like, it doesn't matter what Reform UK voters are offered by the Tories at this stage. They don't believe them anymore. Because Rishi Sunak has said, I will stop the boats. He hasn't stopped the boats. I will bring down legal migration. He hasn't done that. So there's nothing, they keep talking about a great offer to Reform UK voters. But if you're a Reform UK voter and you hate immigration, you hate foreigners coming in, there's nothing the Conservatives can do, because Reform will always have the advantage. They will say, we will bring it down to zero. Because you don't believe the Conservatives when they say, we will bring it down to zero, because they're in power and they haven't achieved that. Reform will say, we will bring it down to zero, and and they know that they will never be tested. And for some reason, Reform UK voters believe that Richard Tice and Nigel Farage can bring immigration down to zero. Or maybe they just don't really believe that, they just want to give the Tories a bloody nose. But either way, you're not going to come back to the Conservatives if you have an alternative, which is more extreme. But at the end, this is gold for the Labour Party, because the Conservatives chasing far-right voters that they will never actually win over means that they're not focusing on the centre ground. And it means that Labour can take over that centre ground. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.